Hello, Pythonistas. That's what I'm going to call y'all, Pythonistas. So this is Ben. He's awesome. And he's going to talk about type. And we're going to listen. It's going to be awesome. I don't have any additional announcements this week, or this month, so just keep being awesome.
All right, hello. My name is Ben Kiel. This is what I do. I come to you as a terrible programmer. This is true. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and then how I use Python and what I do. And you can stop, interrupt me, ask questions, I don't care. So anyway, I do mostly in my professional life typeface design and production. I happen to have somehow gotten a master's in typeface design at the University of Reading in England. From there I went to work at a company called House Industries. House Industries, I just put these slides together. I'm like, oh, I don't know what the next one is. Now I do. A company called House Industries in Delaware, and moved back to St. Louis about a year ago. And I'm just going to show a couple sort of a random sampling of stuff I've worked on and been involved with, so you can have a sense of what my work kind of is. And now the heating goes on. I have this, it's good. So one of the things that I worked on while at House Industries is a project called photo lettering. And photo lettering was a display lettering house that started in the 1930s into the 1980s in New York. It did everything it basically had a huge cultural impact that a lot of people don't know about, but it got everything from type for World War II posters, New York Times, Beatles' Yellow Submarine, all sorts of things, to the point it's actually, photo lettering as a term is actually in the dictionary. And so it was a process. I've sort of pulled a bunch of stuff from design lectures and technology lectures that I've given, so it's kind of a mismatch. But anyway, photo lettering basically made it into the dictionary, and it's a really unique process. It worked kind of like this. You would go, you would call up and say, hey, I need a headline for something. They would give you a sketch of it, you would approve it, and then it ended up being produced as a stat. I'm skipping over like so much that I usually do, and this goes so slowly. You can see it was the Rutherford machine, which is that little machine there. You get a positive, which would go to a lettering artist who would touch it up, which then finally would be made into a stat, and you get it to put in your design. So photo lettering film, it was a film process. It was not a digital process at all. It was a film process. The films look like this. Actually, photo lettering, the company went to Kodak to have this film specially made just for them. The films, the alphabets were originally on glass plates, and they found out glass broke a whole bunch, so that's why they went to film. Photo lettering is really well known for its catalogs. These are actually pretty collectible at this point, and really wonderfully designed. The logo for photo lettering was done by Alex Steinwise. In design history, Alex Steinwise is kind of the guy who came up with the concept of the record cover, the record album cover. Before him, they were just plain, and then he realized that you could sell more records if you put a design on them. Photo lettering was started by a guy. I just like showing this stuff. This is a hand-painted birthday card for Ed Rontaler, who started photo lettering. He lived to be about 104. Ed, in addition to doing photo lettering, was super involved in English spelling reform. He was a super interesting guy. Here's his 100th birthday card, and this is the cover of the catalog that Alex Steinwise designed in 1955. House Industries got the photo lettering archive, and this is how they found it in 2003 in a storage locker on the Upper West Side of New York. The company never digitized the films, and so the 80s came, the 90s came, and they went out of business pretty quickly because there's no way of getting the product digitally. So basically what, There's another shot. House Industries did, and I love this PR shot. This is total fake. Like, you can't run a web browser that actually runs the website on that Mac, but the photo is great. So what the photo lettering became when House Industries bought it was we went and digitized, and are still in the process of digitizing the films, and there are about 6,000 films in photo lettering. And there's a website that you go to. There's kind of some of the designs. Here is a bit of the process. This is a font editor. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We see sort of the films only have A through Z, no accident characters. We fill it out to kind of encompass anything you could possibly think of using, Central European, everything. It's a sort of wonderful editing process. So one of the films in photo lettering is Kamiko Gothic, which look like this. I'm going to show you the site. So it's basically a website where you go and you can type in whatever you want. So it's modeling that same photo lettering selling process, but on the web. So you type in the headline that you want. You can pick an alphabet style below. Some of them, like Kamiko Gothic, you can actually interpolate on the fly. So this is all math being done on the web server as you move those sliders. There are, I think, 5 or so master fonts that then get mathematically interpolated between to get what you see on the screen as you're sliding. We like to say this is infinite. It's a total lie, because the UI would not work if it was infinite. So the sliders actually have notches, because we actually tried it without that, and what happened is as soon as you clicked or moved your mouse anywhere near it, everything ground to a halt. Because it actually has to interpolate and send the image back to the browser. So anyway, that's just an example of it. It's another example. This is an 8-layer alphabet. So this is actually 8 font files making this thing, which the buying process kind of works like this. You can buy. It's really cheap. It's like $7 a headline. You can get it for web for print, as an image or not. And then you can get it as a vector PDF file. You can do whatever you want. Recolor, retouch, rearrange, whatever you want to do. Typesetting this in Illustrator or another sort of application, if you had 8 fonts, is really tricky and not fun to do. Photo lettering actually makes it pretty easy. Because this is, I don't know what comes after the zeros, because this is 2010, 2014. Of course, there was an app for that. So there's now a photo lettering iPhone app where, much true to its name, you can take a photo and put some lettering on top and send it to whatever you want. So it's using the same alphabets, just in a different context. So there's that. Another project I worked on was Alexander Gerard collection. Alexander Gerard was a sort of mid-century, I love this photo. This was a plane that you would go on an international flight in the 70s. He did everything for Braniff Airways. And he really actually designed everything. Plane interiors, he hired the fashion designers for the stewardess uniforms, everything. I can't imagine like getting on a plane going to South America for 7 hours on a flight on this plane. I would go totally nuts, but it was the 70s, so it's totally cool. What I also love is he even picked the things for the in-flight catalog that you could buy, like basically Braniff Airways. So this is all for Braniff Airlines, including like their in-flight, where you can buy this Sky Mall-esque catalog. What I love is you could buy Mexican wrestler masks, which just seems like, for hijacking a plane, like a really bad idea. You can see that the guy sitting on the wing. So he designed everything, from the luggage tags to the salt and sugar packages. I don't have a slide of this, but he even designed picked the furniture, designed the furniture for the departure lounges, everything. And designed this typeface, which really only existed like this as a film face that I redigitized for the Gerard collection. Here it is in its digital form, made into an object, because this photograph's way better than just a flat printout. This is called Gerard Sky. He was a fabric and textile designer for Herman Miller. This is a little bit of lettering he did for a hang tag. which we then turned into a typeface family called Gerard Slab that I did, which comes in 3 widths. So you kind of get a sense of that. Again, just some more shots. I will actually get to Python, don't worry. So just more shots of that in motion. Remember this, so this is, when I was talking about interpolation, this is an application called Supercollator. This is all done with Python, this entire application. And this is actually what is behind what you saw in photo lettering. I didn't write this, a man named Eric Blockland wrote this. And so it's basically, you give it a certain number of drawn things and we'll do the interpolation. So you can use this as a design time tool. So if you want to explore you know, what happens when something's really wide, really narrow, really light, and pick what you want that way, or you can use it as a production tool. So you draw all sorts of masters, you spit it out as a bunch of fonts that you can refine for final production. Just more Alexander Gerard stuff, because it's kind of wonderful. This is the Herman Miller Textile Object Store, which is in New York. Total financial failure, like brilliant sort of store design, financial failure. You've got the model that he did for the store, which I love, because it's pretty much dead on. And you see those little dolls, those were done by a woman named Marilyn Newhart, and when House released the typeface collection, Marilyn did a new design of those dolls for the release. House likes doing all sorts of stuff with objects, so of course there are blocks that go along with that. Another project I worked on was a custom typeface for Lucky Magazine. Lucky Magazine is the magazine all about shopping. I don't understand it as a magazine concept, to be perfectly honest. But they picked, it all comes back to photo lettering. They picked a photo lettering alphabet that they wanted done for the redesign. So we did that for them. It was actually one of the first faces, maybe one of the first commercial faces done with an application I'm going to show you called RoboFont in a little bit. That's just the final font in a magazine. Again, it's House, so everything gets applied to blocks in some sort of way. These were a set of call them the counting koi, just fish blocks. The numerals on these came from the Lucky typeface family. The numerals got super exaggerated. Sort of run through a very, this is a reference for that, run through a very 1970s filter till you got to the end. So that's what came out of that. Pattern, print. This gets applied to all sorts of stuff. These are a line of t-shirts that House did with a company called Uniqlo, or Uniqlo, I always butcher that. But you got that, so that's the same number set. And then you have to have a stencil version of everything. So of course there's a stencil version of that. So like I said, I moved back to St. Louis about a year ago and set up my own sort of office here at actually Nebula, where we are today. It's back there, or it used to be back there. I'm sort of in a weird moving process. But that's my summer intern, Tyler. Just a couple more recent projects that I will breeze through. This is Carl's stat script. This is done for the recent campaign of all those shoes. It started from, here's the digital version. Here's the final, here's what we were given, which was a bit of lettering done by a illustrator in Dutch illustrator, I think. I can't remember right off the top of my head. So then we were sort of tasked, this is a project done with Jesse Raymond and I, turning this into a digital form. So just back and forth. The illustrator gave us this, and we made this. So it's sort of taking lettering and making a function as a typeface, including all the characters that you need for it to function as a typeface. That Aldo could then use for their branding for this recent campaign, which I think is about to wrap up, but you see it in store, things like that. So this is all the typeface, not that bit of lettering. The last thing I'll show you in terms of work was, and this was actually a project I started at House Industries. Actually, I started this project the day that I gave notice that I was leaving, funny enough, and finished the project. I still do a lot of work for House. The New Yorker has recently gone through a redesign. And I did a custom version. Well, New Yorker is known for this typeface, which is called Urban. I redrew new versions. So this existed as one typeface, and they now have 3 styles of it. So it was 1 before, now it's 3. It's the high contrast version. And this is sort of pulled from design lectures. So this is just kind of showing how that typeface was used. Mostly, I think a lot of this was actually woodcuts, not an actual font. In the New Yorker in the past, sort of things that we pulled from as part of the design process. So you can kind of see these small letters, things like that. You can kind of see those 2 L's in the all are very different. That's how you kind of know if it's a piece of lettering or a woodcut in a typeface. So this is kind of where it ended. You can see all those little small detail-y things got changed here, turned into ligatures. There to the left, this is an application called Robofont, which I'll talk about here in a second. So this is the high contrast version of Urban, and then you can see the 3 versions here, high, medium, and sort of this is the bottom one is the actual redraw, where we started from of just cleaning up the digital version of Urban that they had, and then progressed from there. They also got a custom version of a typeface called Neutroface. This was an interesting design challenge. The art director of the magazine was like, I want Neutroface, but not Neutroface, but Neutroface. So we sort of changed some of the details that make Neutroface, but kind of kept it the same. One of the details is the top of that A is usually really sharp. It comes to almost a point, so it's been flattened out. The other thing that we did, Neutroface is on the left. New Yorker interface is on the right, and if you can see the difference between the height of the lowercase letters, so the height of the lowercase letters is called the X height, that got raised in the New Yorker's version. This is the bold weight. They went a slightly bolder weight, so you can see that's a little heavier, and the X height is taller. And you can see how the N has these really pointed things, terminals up top and bottom, and then that got sort of flattened. And the one on the right, also in the W. So it still feels much like the same typeface, but it's custom to them. So it kind of does, it's Neutroface, but it's not Neutroface, but it is Neutroface. Wyatt's the creative director there, and he loves Neutroface. So it's a nice quote from him. I'm not really going to gloss too much on this. I teach type design. I asked to teach Introduction to Python there's a certificate program in typeface design at the Cooper Union in New York, and I teach an Intro to Python for typeface designers class there. These are shots from the classes I teach at Washington University in St. Louis, and I teach type 1, type 2, things like that. Make my students do all they hate it. Good for them. Occasionally, very occasionally, I do graphic design. I got into typeface design because my graphic design work was really typographic. The irony is now I actually very rarely do graphic design. So just some things. I tend to do, as a newspaper for an artist, I kind of do small things when I have the chance. And again, primarily typographic. Some logo and lettering work. Both of those logos I did for a bicycle guy, things like that. So, like I said, you all may be Python masters, and this is your toolkit, right? I have this pesky minor in computer science, and that's about it. Everything else is sort of cobbled together, learned on my own. So my Python is more like this. So the hobby horse, I think, was mine as a child. So from this to this is kind of like where I'm at, right? So Python, you're asking? Like, come on, this is a Python meetup, and we've just seen like a bunch of letters. So type design is really tool making. I'm not, like I said, I got into typeface design being a graphic designer, but type is a tool for other designers. So I make tools, that's basically what I do. But in the course of my working life, I make tools to make tools, which is nothing new in, I make digital tools to make type, which is nothing new for actual typeface design. Typeface design has a rich history of punch cutting, so you've got like, to make the counter shape, that's the V shape and the Y. This is probably done with a punch, so it's another piece of metal that was smacked into this. This is the punch that you use to make a mold to make type. Just some more of that. This I love as a creative tool. You need an accent on your A. You have a punch for an A. You don't really want to cut another punch. You don't want to cut that A again. So you just wire on it the accent that you need, smack that into the piece of metal, take it off, put another accent on, right? So it's pretty smart, actually. There's nothing new. The one revolution in typeface design is before you had to actually carve things by hand, typeface design can be considered sculpture in that way. But once you have a pantographic router, which this is the monotype pantographic router, you can see a little brass plate down there, and this cuts, here it is, pretty much bigger, so you have a pattern which you can cut multiple sizes for multiple sizes of metal type, because type used to be a physical object, it wasn't something you could just scale on the screen. So you need different sizes. If you're hand cutting everything, you have to cut a punch for each size, which is awesome until you hit the Industrial Revolution and you need type faster, hence the pantograph. So that's what it ends up making. So that's a one letter matrice for, I think, the order N. If I can, this projector is fantastic. I'm seeing things in my slides I've never seen. I think this is an N, I could be wrong. So that's what it's cutting, from that size down to this size. And this is put into a monotype machine. Monotype and monotype, these machines are amazing. If you've never seen them run, Google it. Same deal, patterns for wood type. I love wood type. This is another router. This is a double-headed router, so you cut two pieces at once. Analog tools, type designers have always used these things. So stenciling is a tool. This is William Addison Dwiggen's stencils for Falcon. And so he separated letters into parts, and then he could stencil that really quickly to get a sense of how the design was going to work. This is when you couldn't hit print and get a laser print. You actually had to like send it off. People would cut it out of metal. You get a smoke proof. So it took months to get something that you had designed back. So you came up with stencils. They could just stencil to see what the text would look like. Just some more of that same idea. All right, so again, you're saying Python? Please, let's talk about Python. So here's what we're talking about Python. Who's this guy? I love this photo. Okay. Anyone know who this is? It is Guido van Rossum. That t-shirt right there is designed by type designers. Guido's younger brother is a Jus van Rossum. Jus van Rossum, here they are. I love this photo, by the way, because like if you need a stock photo of the 90s, this is it, right? Like,
before
yes, this is pre-Google. I love the monitors in the back. Like this is the early 90s in the photo. So here on the left is Eric McLaughlin, on the right is Jus van Rossum, Guido's younger brother. They're type designers. They're a team of guys called Letter Error. They designed that t-shirt right there. They're extremely famous. This looks entirely ugly. This is a typeface called Beowulf. What it did is it hacked the Adobe Type 3 specification. It had a random function in it, so every time you hit print, the outlines changed, which was a completely novel concept and something that seemed really sort of pedestrian today, but at the time it was completely new. It was the first time type could actually change as you printed it, which was great if you're doing color separations, because if you know anything about printing, anytime you print, you actually need separations. So if this was in color, there'd be a plate for cyan, a plate for magenta, a plate for yellow, a plate for black. Well, you print to get those plates. You hit print 4 times, and so the type would be different, which I kind of love. And here you go. I love this story. I just tell this story. So, you guys know Donald Knuth, right? Okay, so if you don't know Donald Knuth, he's kind of the guy who's writing, he's still working on why am I blanking the title of his book? Art and Science of Computer Programming? No. Why am I?
It's right there.
Right up there.
I think it's just the art of computer programming.
Yes, the art of computer programming. So it's this thing about programming that's not about a programming language. So he got really into sort of type design, developed something Tech, TEX, and Metafont back when he didn't like how the first edition of his book got reprinted. So he decided that he would just come up with a layout program and a type design, and it would just take a couple months. Well, it took years. But he's super interested in this kind of thing, and he wrote Eric and Used. Eric and Used were like 20-year-old kids. They're from the Netherlands. They had no clue who this guy was. They just kind of shoved this letter and never wrote back to him. Didn't realize until like a decade later, like, oh, that was Don Knuth who wrote us. Maybe we should write him back. So anyway.
That's okay. He only checks his stuff like every 6 months anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you've never go to his web page, which is really basic, but he actually has a secretary who just prints out the important emails he gets and puts them in a folder, and he reads it every 6 months. It's a beautiful way to live. If you can live that life, live that life. Anyway, so this is a slide I showed to my Intro to Python class. So after showing them all these great things, and Guido and Eric and Used, who are like really good Python programmers, they're Pythonic supermen, right? But I also say Python is great because you can use it just a little bit, like sriracha chili sauce. So this comes down to this. Data. Type design is data intensive. I worked out at House Industries over 20 years. Per employee, and there are about 8 employees, there were almost 18,000 glyphs in the font library at House Industries per employee. It's a lot of letters. One typeface family, which was 13 fonts with almost 20,000 glyphs. This was Neutroface that we expanded to Greek, Cyrillic, and you name the Latin-based non-Latin language. That project was done over people working over 4 time zones, that expansion. How do we do all of this? Here we get to Python. First we gotta talk about XML, because why not, right? So,
We're always hinted, or?
Oh no.
What I was gonna say.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
it's like hinting that word.
Yes, hinting that would murder us. No. So here's where I want to talk about this problem of lock-in. So type design obviously is a very small community. Applications for it die often. A lot of the times that data gets lost. And so Eric Van Block, Yus Van Rossum, and another guy named Tal Lemming, I'm going to show you a lot of Tal's work in a little bit, came up with this way of representing type designs as XML. It's called the Unified Font Object, which is just font because it's UFO. So there are lots of jokes about this, right? But it's basically an XML representation of a font file. So you can export it, you can read it into any application. It's become an interchange format for typeface design. These are sort of the 3 main type applications right now. FontLab on the left, its file format is proprietary. RoboFont, its font format is the UFO, and Glyphs, its font format is also proprietary. All of these font editors will export in some way to the UFO font format, which means that you can have other applications that do really specialized things. It's the Unix model of breaking tasks down into discrete programs. So on the left is an application for kerning. And the second one is a thing just for doing interpolation, what I showed you before. And next is, that's a preparator to make sure that your outlines are ready for interpolation and a rounding thing. So there are a bunch of tools that work just with the UFO font format. What enabled this was a library called RoboFab. There's a whole history to why it's called RoboFab. RoboCop, the movie, was basically involved in naming this. But basically, RoboFab set up an object model for type designers. And a font file, a font design file can be represented kind of with all these objects. You got the font, it's got some information, kerning, some info. It's got a lot of glyphs, right? Those glyphs have contours, those contours have points. So this is a really simple object model of a font. That object model exists in a way that you can programmatically interact with it using the RoboFab sort of library. So anything that supports RoboFab, which is all three of those applications, like you can write scripts using the RoboFab library, and it'll run in FontLab, RoboFont, and glyphs. So then other things have, so like I said, there are lots of jokes with UFO. So there have been a lot of other things written that kind of use the same model. DEF CON is one of them. It's RoboFab for the command line. I use terminal every day. Every day do I use terminal. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna actually show code here in a second. So DEF CON uses this model and adds a bunch to it. It gives Unicode data. Unicode is a huge deal in typeface design. Unicode makes our world go around. I love Unicode. I really do love Unicode. It gives us data. So that one project I was talking about where we extended Nitroface into 13 different fonts, 20,000 glyphs, had all these people working on it. There was a guy in Russia doing Cyrillic, there was a guy in Greece doing the Greek, I was working on it, another guy was working on it, and they're all kerning. So kerning is adjusting the space between two letters when you have to kind of do that, because you always have to do that. But the Greek guy was kerning the Greek, the Cyrillic guy was kerning the Cyrillic, I was kerning the Latin. How do you deal with all that data? DEF CON made that really, really easy. Oh, look, it's code. So you've got the Python. It's so simple. I love DEF CON. So you get a font object. You can sort through the kerning, right? If a kern pair starts with a @ symbol, it's class kerning. Don't worry about that. But font Unicode data, well, actually, if you give it what a glyph name is, it'll tell you, hey, what kind of language is this? So you could really separate out the kerning into separate sources this way. So you can say, hey, it's Greek, Cyrillic, Latin, spit it out or ignore it. So that let us filter the data. Walks through, okay. So we ended up with 3 UFOs, one for the Greek, one for the Cyrillic, one for the Latin. RoboFab, which you can also run from the command line, has a whole library for creating UFOs. Unfortunately, not the flying object variety, just the bunch of text file variety. And so, very, very simply, you just combine dictionaries. Kerning is just a dictionary, that's all it is. Like I said, I am the world's worst programmer. I just deal with super simple data types. My life revolves around for loops, dictionaries, and lists. That's it. That's all, for the most part, I deal with. But it's great. Kerning is just a dictionary. What value should A and V be? That's it. So you can combine those dictionaries really simply once you have separated out your sources. Do that twice, got all the kerning. Bam, done. Of course, you have to check to make sure things are fine. Kerning is a whole nightmare. So you just have to make sure you haven't stuck the same parent twice, so you're not overwriting values, things like that. But it's just combining groups and spitting out a new UFO. That's it. This is something that if you tried to do another way, people do this with Excel spreadsheets. I wish I was joking about that, but people do this kind of work with Excel. A frightening number of typeface designers use Excel to a degree that is just a little disturbing. Because you could do it this way. Oh, now we're going to show so this is fun stuff. This was a house quote. So I was actually usually the one saying this is the web, we have made me think about things this way. So web fonts. Who does web design here? Some people. Okay, fine. Web fonts. I will just say I hate them. So here's the problem with web fonts, right? Most foundries have done things. Open type fonts, we can talk about that here all blue in the face. But basically, most fonts are designed with PostScript outlines. And I always mix this up. There's cubic and quadratic curves. One is TrueType, one is PostScript. They're just two different font formats. TrueType is what you want for web fonts because you can hint it so it looks good for Windows. You can't really do that for PostScript outlines. Most foundries are making stuff for prints. They're using PostScript outlines. Everyone draws in PostScript outlines. Drawing in TrueType outlines is kind of insane. Part of the process of making an actual shipping font for people to use is that you decompose all these glyphs. So if you think about going back to our punch where you had an A and it was wired, and an accent was wired on top of it, you can think about it in the digital realms. You have two components. You'd have your A and you'd have that accent, and you'd have a virtual glyph that just said in here. So they weren't outlines; they were just references to outlines. Does that sort of make sense? Hopefully it does. But to make a shipping font, you have to decompose to flatten that so they become outlines. That's really bad for TrueType outline fonts. It makes the font really big. Web designers care about this. You want the font to be as small as possible. So what happens when you have all your masters as flattened, non-component source files? Oops. You don't want to go back through hand and re-component all this stuff, but you can do it very easily. Okay, here we go. So this is just a UFO file. You can actually say, show package contents. It's a really simple sort of thing. It's got some data, it's got glyphs. Each glyph is this is actually just a piece of XML. I'm going to drag that out now. I just tried that out. So if you really hated yourself, you could actually handwrite all the XML for a font if you really hated yourself. But what's great about this is if you have to edit something, it's not locked in the binary files, the text files, so you can actually fix things. Which sometimes you have to. So it's a really simple thing. This font, it's a Baroque, which is lots of fun, some photo lettering. It's all flat, right? That's not so great. So you can actually, there is this script that I wrote because I didn't want to go through hand. So doing this by hand would mean you open this up, you go, okay, great. I need to add a component. A, great, and I need to add the Rob, great, okay, close this window, here's Rob, I'm going to move this, so it lines up, but it needs to line up pretty much exactly, it's not quite hit, okay, now we're good, now I can delete the outlines, now I have my component version, we can hit this for the web, times 400 glyphs, right, like that sucks. So, it's all the tests. I actually occasionally write tests. It's frightening when I do, but I actually occasionally write tests. So I have to make sure this actually works well. So this is just a script that goes through, and what it does is it makes a digest of all the points in a glyph. basically it calculates the distance between everything and makes a representation. And then it can go through all the glyphs in the font, not that one because we did it, but this one, and say, hey, does that digest match this shape? If it does, replace it with a component. That's all it does. It's got some knowledge in here about, you know, it has to make sure things are equal. It's got to figure out, like, you don't want to spend all that time. It's actually kind of intensive for the computer to try every single glyph with the A. If you know it's an A, you can just try anything that starts with an A, right? So it's got some knowledge about that. But basically, you run this sucker. Hopefully, in theory, perfect. It gives us a font. So here we go. This one actually, which is one thing. It's actually pretty quick to run. It's very nice. Nice timestamp, so it doesn't overwrite your data. It's always nice when you don't do that by accident. You do that once, and you stop doing that. So this thing, which before was outlined, is now componented. So you can send it off to the hinter, because thankfully that's not me, and they can hint this font, and they'll charge you a lot less because they don't have to deal with doing it for the A over and over and over again.
So what you're saying is that pulls out that outline of the A by itself, so you just do whatever you want, and then you do the accents.
Right. The way TrueType works is you hint this, and hinting is just basically, TrueType hinting is actually writing a small program that tells the font, tells whatever displays the font, whatever rendering engine displays the font, what to do with the pixels at each size, which is incredibly tedious to do, and that's why I'm really happy I don't hint. Because if you think typeface design is like watching paint dry, hinting typeface design is really like watching paint dry. So they just have to hint that, and then it gets applied to all of these. That's the way TrueType works. It's actually pretty efficient in that way. You have to make adjustments here and there, but that's about it.
Now, I have a question about hinting, actually. Do you think that the rise of higher DPI displays mean less hinting, or just different hinting, or what's the market looking like?
I would say different hinting, but people have been saying hinting is going to die for decades now, and it has not died. Actually, like, the map throws away everything. All hints are gone on the map. But Windows still uses it, although direct write, that rendering technology in Windows right now actually does a really good job of displaying TrueType PostScript outlines. So as applications move to using direct write, hinting will become less and less of an issue. Hinting PostScript fonts is very easy. The logic is, so for TrueType you have to write a small, I'm digressing, I digress a lot. If you don't care about hinting, I'm sorry. I will stop after this one thing. The model for TrueType is that all the intelligence is in the font files. The font file has a program in it that displays stuff, and the renderer, the thing that displays that font, that interprets the hints is really dumb. PostScript is the opposite. You give a font some very basic knowledge. This is what a stem width is, these are where your overshoots are, that's it. And PostScript assumes that the rendering engine has all the smarts in it. So its model is fonts live a really long time. I think PostScript is actually smarter than TrueType, because fonts really do live a long time. The first fonts I bought were in high school, they still work on my machine. Your computer changes all the time, right? So if you program your font you program your font for rendering a decade ago, things are going to change, but you can't do anything about it. But if the logic, all the smarts in the rendering engine, then that gets updated. It just interprets simple data from the font. So that hopefully will make things a lot easier, but Windows XP refuses to die, basically. Yes, Windows XP will never die. It is forever going to haunt us. Anyway, all right, so that's that. DEF CON again. All right, now this has nothing to do with type design, or ice cream, or spices. So the thing I just showed you, I'm going to show you vanilla, I'm going to show you drawbot, and I'm going to stop talking. The application I just showed you that I'm drawing in, this is called RoboFont. This entire application that I spend all day in is completely done in Python. Everything in this is done in Python. And it's done through something called vanilla. Vanilla is basically lets you write OS X applications using and Tal Leming, I didn't write vanilla. Tal Leming is a type designer and programmer and who has done a ton of stuff, developed vanilla. And it is a layer on top of Python Object-C, Python Objective-C, that uses that bridge and lets you specify an interface programmatically. So you don't use interface builder at all. You're just writing code to write the interface. This entire application is built on that. It runs day in and day out, doesn't crash. It's fantastic. So what can this do for you? Let's just look at that. All right. Okay, this is the library for vanilla. It's actually pretty well documented. I'll just show you. So this is the test file for it. I'll run this. It'll get grumpy at a certain point. But this tests everything. So say you want to make a window. This is all you do to make a window. You say, I want a window of this size. I want to put a button on that window. This is it. This is all the code. Everything uses callbacks to program all the functionality. That's it. So if I run this, that's embarrassing. That's so embarrassing. On my other machine, it does, and that's because I haven't updated this, and Python doesn't know where that is. Awesome. All right, that's what happens when you have testing your laptop. Okay, hold on a second. Let's see if that's actually true. You're gonna have to bear with me, I'm sorry. Who knows where to put this stuff in their Python in the folder? I do actually.
I'm guessing you can't just install it with pip.
No, I will say the one downside to the type community is that we tend not to put stuff on pip. And I don't know why that is, to be honest. I think it's really just an overhead kind of thing. It would be awesome if you could install it with pip, but so goes. Vanilla is 2 here. Why? I guess it would help if it had a right place, right? That's always helpful. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Is that? All right. You are all very patient and kind. Thank you for being so.
It would be a good demo if everything worked.
I know it's true, isn't it? All right, that's cool. All right, so now this should work. And it does. Okay, so that's just pure code, and this is just the test. It will draw in theory a grid, although who knows. So this is just the window test. So you need a window, it's textured, you want a drawer, it does that. I actually kind of love running this thing. So it has anything you can think of in terms of an OS X UI built into it. It's a really nice thing to use. List buttons. The list thing is, you know, here you go. Everything. The test is great. And it's just a beautiful way of writing native OS X applications all in Python. That's it. So how do I use this? I use this in the most basic and simple of ways. So here we go. Okay. Here's how I use that. Proofing is something I do a lot of. This is how simple it is actually to have an application. Here is a very, very simple application that has a window, has a very simple window. Let's just run it here. Has no icon. It's got a very simple window, and that's it. It makes a PDF. It does a very simple thing. And you can drag and drop things into it, and then it has a button. That's it. So here's a column. Let's drag a font into it. I have to find the font. Here we go. So I can drag some fonts into it. It just gives me a list. That's it. Once we've got that, it basically just makes a PDF. And what it does is it uses, does anyone know Report Lab? Yeah, Report Lab is fantastic. I love Report Lab. Report Lab is just, here's a pen. I think I probably stole this code from something that I had laying around. And all this does is make a PDF, but a very simple PDF. So that is basically it. The PDF is here, and it just compares things, right? So instead of making an InDesign document to try and figure out if everything is correct, this is actually done for that large project, so I can make sure that all the glyphs were the correct glyphs. So everything was named correctly, all the accents were right, all that stuff. So I can just flip through on a line view or print this out, although I probably just looked at this as a PDF and went through and said, okay, everything's right. Really simple, all done with vanilla as an application, because it's a more useful thing to have a little application than it is to have a script that you have to run. And all the code to make the UI is right here. That's it. And you get a simple program. It's a really simple example, but it's a really powerful example, I think. I hope. Yeah.
I noticed that it was in a subdirectory called dist, which implies to me that you can just make a setup.py and automatically spits out a .app file.
Yep.
Can you take that .app and move it over to another machine and it's covered up all the Python stuff that's unique with it?
Yep.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep. So there are two ways of, and I will not lie to you, using the Python Objective-C bridge is fussy, to say the least. Once you wrap your head around it, it's actually pretty easy, but wrapping your head around it is the bit that, like, it takes me forever to set up a project. But once you do, yeah, so here we've got, here's that code, here's this. You can run these one of two ways, depending on how you want to set up. There's one switch called A, which doesn't link everything, and it just links everything. It's just links to what's ever on your system. If you don't set it up that way, it actually is a whole self-contained thing, and you can ship it and send it to anyone. And they don't have to have all the libraries. It bundles everything. Bundles Python, bundles the libraries that you use, bundles whatever you call an import. It's there. You can give it to someone that doesn't have Python, who somehow has magically removed Python from their OS X machine, which I don't think you actually can, and it runs. You don't have to worry about versions or anything. It's static. Bam. There you go. So you can do that with any. I mean, you can make a UI with Python with interface builder and all that. What vanilla does is it just gives you a way of programmatically making it. thing. So it can be fussy to start with, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. And on top of vanilla for type designers, and actually for Robo Font, there are a bunch of libraries built on top of vanilla that are basically tools for making type applications. So it's a kit of parts built upon this kit of parts, so you can make things. It deals with glyphs, it deals with line views, it deals with very specific UI things that you would need in a font editor that you probably all don't care about, but vanilla is kind of the cool thing. Tau never talks. Tau's a terrible self-promoter. Ruby had a thing like this when there was the Ruby bridge for OS X that everyone got very excited by, and Tau had done this whole thing for Python, and he's like, no one has ever talked about vanilla. And we're like, that's because you've never told anyone it exists. And it's not something you can install with pip, and that's probably part of it.
Is there a reason for, I mean, is there a licensing issue?
No, it's MIT licensed. You can, any commercial application can use it. It's just more like, the type world is actually very small and doesn't apparently talk to the outside world. So there's that. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is, because I know it's 8 o'clock, it is a Tuesday night. So basically, and I'm not doing a very incredibly great job, but Python for me on a day-to-day basis lets me walk through all this information that's in the font and check things. Type design is really tedious. And if I don't automate stuff, I'm going to forget to check it. So if I need to compare what glyphs are on a font, I can do that really quickly with Python. I don't have to make a list, I don't have to sort things, I can just look at a dictionary, compare the two, tell me what's missing, tell me what's wrong. I can compare widths of things, I can check all my data all the time by writing code. And I should say that the really nice thing about RoboFont is that it's got this whole scripting window right here. It has a whole interface. So I can just say fonts, whatever variable name you want. Right, so print all the glyph names of the font, or I can print all the widths. You know, this is all built into RoboFont. It's got a whole scripting layer, so I can do things like this. I can say, you know, I can have it check. You know, I can just sit there and do things. So I can just check data this way really quickly. Super simple coding, this is basically what I do. But it's really helpful to my work. Say this was a monospace font and I needed to go through and make sure that the glyph widths were all the same. I could just say, hey, tell me any glyph that's not 600 units wide. So I can go and check things really quickly. There's a great, you can write extensions for it. These are all the scripts that I have going on. You know, I have things specific for clients. I need to change things. I need to make a subset for web fonts. I just have a script and it encapsulates all that knowledge so I can do it again and again and again. And more importantly for me, I can look back to see what I did and I have it in code. I don't have to remember what did I do 3 months ago. I can say, oh, this is what I did because I wrote a script that did it. Instead of hoping that I took notes, I can actually say, oh, this is what happened. So that's what it is for me. I guess the other cool thing about Drawbot is now, of course, everyone is on GitHub. I don't understand, I'll be perfectly honest, like Git confuses the heck out of me. I can poke at it and it bites me often. Subversion I can understand completely, Git. But everyone has moved to GitHub because that's where the cool kids are, so that's what we're doing these days. And so there's this extension called Mechanic, which basically, this is so brilliant. This is what I actually love about GitHub, is anyone who's writing extensions for, I don't even know what broadhead background is, I gotta check that one out. For RoboFont, if they register on GitHub, they basically pull request, I don't get these things, right? anyone who adds their bit of their extension for RoboFont to Mechanic, anytime you open up RoboFont, Mechanic goes and checks GitHub to see what's new, and if there's an update. And it'll auto-update all these extensions and then tell you anything that's new, which is actually kind of cool. So like, I actually have no clue who this guy is. I'm gonna check that out. It's a small world, so I don't know who most of these people are. That one I'm gonna install. But there's just all these tools that you can add to RoboFont that's available as this community of type designers are writing code for this application. It's all in Python, which is kind of cool. At least I think it's kind of cool. I don't know what this does. I need to write code to make this have a description, because this is what drives me nuts about this thing, is that you don't get a description of what UFO Cleaner does. I think this actually draws your font as sausages. I'm pretty sure that's what that one does. I think we should have to try that right now. Because I think, I saw something on Twitter, which is like one of the most insane things anyone has ever said in the English language. Hey. Oh yes, it draws it as sausages. So as sausage links, basically. This is not the font to try it on. Undo is a beautiful thing, right? Oh, preview, that's what we want to do. Oh, so you can draw behind the thing so you can see what's going to happen, which is what I kind of love about RoboFont. Clearly, I love RoboFont. How do I teach people to use this? This is an application called Drawbot. It's super simple. You write code here, pictures show up here, error messages show up here. That's what Drawbot does. It's like processing for Python. It's only OS X. I know that can be a problem, but that's the way it goes. And this is this stupid thing. I just did a workshop at VCU to graphic design students, not type design students. This is the first time I've done this, just showing them how to program basically in Python for making stuff in Drawbot. Drawbot exports to PDF. It actually exports, this only does one. Okay. So basically I taught pattern making. It makes simple shapes. Let's pull something actually more useful. I have to close this because there are like more circles than I care to think about and draw on top of each other here, and it just kind of wants to beach ball things because I kind of chose really bad values. But what Drawbot does is you can write really simple code that people, oh, thank you. Okay, good. Really simple code, page non-random. I have terrible things. Let's see what this does. This may go on forever. It's the problem with not testing these things. Or remembering the code I wrote. Okay. Oh yeah. So it's totally just showing the students how you can. So the way it works is there's a drawing state of the canvas. This is your canvas. You can set the size of your canvas. Everything's in points. You set the drawing state for the fill, so you can actually set fill values to random colors. Fills between 0 and 1. Random is a great function for that. And you can draw an oval, change the color, 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 draw an oval. Nice little definition here, and you can just do that for as many times as you want, and you kind of get, it's actually too long. Let's see. Let's make these values bigger. And it'll take less time. So students can just sit here and start playing with what happens with random values. You can get some really ugly stuff, but just how you can start experimenting and draw things that would be, if you're a design student, drawing the really complicated thing we saw first, which was kind of actually beautiful in a way I kind of enjoy. In Illustrator, no one would ever do that because it's a billion ovals. But with code, you can do that, which is kind of brilliant. Untitled, isn't that a great name? Okay. What's nice about Drawbot is actually there's multiple pages. So this is going to spit out, this is going to take a bit, but this is actually going to be a multi-page document where you can have the same pattern so you can explore different values, right? So you can actually make a multiple page PDF out of Drawbot. You can actually even turn this into an animation. It'll export movie files. Each page is a frame in your movie, and you can set it to play for a certain number of frames. So I'm going to show you the Drawbot demo. The demo is super, oh wait, no, Alright, so this was just another demo showing, this was the simple thing. So basically the students made patterns. Whether they were good patterns or not, we didn't get into, but just ways of programmatically going through and being very explicit about your design process and making recipes, but not, and those recipes make an end result, and then you as a designer have to pick if the end result is good or not. The computer can't decide what's good. It can just make lots and lots and lots of things, and then you still have to edit them. But I will cap Drawbot off, because Drawbot as a teaching tool is really powerful because it's very simple, and you get results really quickly that students can see, and it's really exciting to so for learning Python or just playing around, it's actually kind of brilliant in a way. And of course, Drawbot is all open source, it's an MIT license, has fantastic documents and courseware, and examples. And the one I'm looking for. Yes, okay. So this is actually just a, well, very quick reference for Drawbot. And it gives you everything you can possibly do, spits it out. So this is how Drawbot kind of works. Draws rectangles, ovals, polygons. You can make paths so you can move the point around. Curve to line twos. You can import images. You can import images from URLs. Make new pages. Set stroke weight, all sorts of stuff. I'll shut up and run this thing. And you'll see at the end, you know, make a PDF, let's export movie files. You can do terrible things with gradients, images. So this is a really terrible, although right now this is very hot in Europe, like European graphic design looks like someone gone crazy with, it looks like your two-year-old is being given a computer. This is sort of in a weird way that disturbs me. But it will actually, it will make movie files. It's kind of cool. So that's Drawbot as a teaching tool. So that's that is a very, very, very quick tour of both what I do, somewhat of how I use Python, although I realize I haven't gotten super into that, but like, that gets boring, I think, very quickly. And what Python kind of aids my workflow and why I use Python. So that's that. Here are URLs for everything. So most of the code I showed is up here on the House of Histories GitHub. RoboFab is that thing, that sort of father/mother of all these tools. Unified font object, if you really care about XML, it's there. And GitHub, Pal's GitHub that has vanilla, all that code is all right there. I didn't write Drawbot, drawbot.org will get you there to Drawbot. So that's what I got.
Right. I have a question. Yeah. I remember Don Knuth saying that after he got tech done, and he actually started to, again, do some other stuff besides doing programming, he said that he had a very difficult time of actually reading a paper after that, because he was looking at the typeface and the typesetting, and he was paying attention to that and not to the actual content. So I was wondering if you do fonts that much, that how much do you have that kind of a bias? That you look at the paper and you see the fonts and
all the time. Yeah, so so the question is like, yeah, this is basically the first thing I tell my students in Type 1. So I teach Type 1's introduction to typesetting and sort of using type on a page at WashU. And the first thing I tell my students is that I'm about to ruin their life because they'll never not notice these things again. And if they actually can ignore those details, they're not going to be a good designer. But yeah, it is an occupational hazard that you can't. I don't buy books. Sometimes I won't purchase a book because of the typeface it uses. Like, my wife has to endure me complaining about the, why? Okay, this just happened the other night. The Kindle iPhone app has the worst justification algorithm in it. It doesn't use hyphenation at all. I don't know how anyone can read that thing. I don't know if you should be reading the thing anyway, but like, its typesetting is so atrocious, and Amazon has so much money, you think that they could actually like hire someone to solve this problem, but it's actually really bad. And my wife has to endure me talking about how horrible this is for 15 minutes and kind of nods her head. And I think has learned after, you know, like 8 years of marriage just to like tune me out completely. But she at least puts on a good face, so there's that. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about this earlier, but the difference between, say, a TrueType font and a PostScript font, and how the rendering system handles those.
Yeah.
So, without getting into too much detail, like, you have TrueType and PostScript fonts and OpenType fonts, and how interchangeable are they?
The basic answer to this is, I have a lecture about this in Boris the Capital students. So think of it this way. There are two different types of outlines, TrueType outlines and PostScript outlines. One uses quadratic curves, one uses cubic curves. Which is which, I can't ever remember. I have to look it up every single time. Doesn't matter. One uses one uses the other. Whatever PostScript uses is way easier to draw in than TrueType. TrueType, you can have multiple off-curve handles, and so you can like really do some screwy things with how the lines move. PostScript only has two off-curve handles per curve segment. Basically, a TrueType font, so anything ending in 2TI, it adds things, it adds to TrueType, it adds to that container format, it adds layout stuff, so you can have ligatures and swap things in and out. But basically, it's a TrueType font you can consider to be a subset of an OpenType font. An OpenType font can have either TrueType outlines in its data or PostScript outlines in its data. It can be either. Generally, if a font ends in .otf, it has PostScript outlines, although that's not a guarantee at all. But in general, it does. If it ends in TTF, it has TrueType outlines. That's the basic answer. It's this whole weird thing that like TrueType was developed by Microsoft and Apple, and then OpenType was developed by Adobe and Apple. But I mean Adobe and Microsoft. Like these companies have been at odds with each other with type technology for a while. Adobe wouldn't license. Apple didn't. No. Microsoft didn't want to pay for the license for a PostScript interpreter, so they got Apple to give them one in exchange for TrueType. And it's this whole crazy history that I'm probably getting wrong because it's off the top of my head.
I'm sorry I asked.
Oh no, it's fine. It's like interesting in a very small way. Like what I enjoy about what I do is like everyone reads, right? Like you can't not read. And I try and impress this upon my students. They're like, why are we studying this? It's like, well, what have you not read today? And it's like, oh, okay, we've all read today. And so type actually has this weird thing where type, culture, and politics have this weird intersection. So it's always sort of interesting. in terms of like, you know, even what's happening in Ukraine, like half of Ukrainian speaks Russian, uses the Cyrillic alphabet, and half uses the Latin alphabet, and now they're at odds. I mean, it's this whole sort of language and culture and type are all tied together in this interesting tension all the time. And so it's actually kind of an interesting thing, to me at least. Granted, my working career is spent staring at black and white shapes and moving points around all day long and writing code, so I might be self-justifying, but I find it to be kind of interesting. So Unicode is great. I love Unicode. Seriously. Unicode does actually have some really wonderful stuff in it. Python support is great for it. Yeah.
What do you think the revenue model is for larger font projects as opposed to, you know, working one-on-one with a client to develop the font? I mean, do you think the big type houses are going to keep selling fonts at, you know, hundreds or thousands of dollars a pop, or do you think it's going to be on a bounty system for open source fonts, or do you know?
I don't know. I hope it's not a bounty system. I really hope it's not a bounty system. And the reason for that is, why do I say that? I have no clue, and I'm taking stabs at it. I think type is always going to be valuable because it allows a company or individual to speak with a certain voice and present themselves in a certain way. And I think there's a lot of value to that, especially in a media-driven society where, you know, image does count for a lot, unfortunately. And so type, I think, is really important. And type actually, people ask me, you know, like, aren't there enough fonts already? Which one answer is probably yes, but another answer is, if you're doing a specific thing, like typesetting a book, there may be 300,000 fonts out there, but for typesetting a book, I can give you a list of maybe 20 that are really good. So is there room for 21st? Of course, right? So I think there's room.
So your answer is like basically, well, you get mail, but how many letters do you get that you actually care about? There's a lot of junk in the market.
Yeah, okay, yes. But the reason why I hope I mean, the bounty system, unfortunately, type takes a long time. Like, the projects I work on are measured in years. You know, the quickest project I'll do is like a month. And that's like one weight, and that's like super pressed in metal, and that's like a small character set. Because I spend a lot of time, I'm not the fastest person, I'll self-admit, I'm not the fastest drawer, I'm not the fastest designer. But, you know, these are projects that evolve over like years and not unheard of. And a bounty system can't support, bounties aren't ever high enough to support that sort of thing, right? Yeah, the bounty system is really set up for like a short burst thing, like solve this bug, fix this thing, like those things, it's not a model that really sustains it in a way that doesn't encourage shortcuts, cheating, or just sloppy work. Like, if you're only getting X number of dollars, you can only spend so much time doing it, so that becomes a big problem, I think.
Well, like Cargo, I would totally use it, but it doesn't work on OS 10, so, you know, I would gladly pay a couple $100 for somebody to fix it, so it would work.
Yeah.
You know.
And you'll probably find someone, but a design project is, I mean, fixing is one thing, but a design project
but
is...
But it's also packaging, I guess, at some level.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's tough. It's really tough. And the flip side is, in the commercial market, like, you'll spend years working on something and you really hope that it sells, and if it doesn't sell, well, then you've wasted your time. So I guess there's the flip side to that, but yeah.
I just figured you'd have a fairly broad perspective since you teach classes and, you know, hopefully people are interested in the overall market on this sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of take the view of, like, when you're buying type, you're buying a tool that hopefully you're going to use. And type is software, but type is a really unique software in the sense that, like, honestly, I have stuff I bought in high school in the 90s that still works. And can you name a piece of software you purchased in the 90s that works?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean...
I wrote code that still works.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can write code that still works, but unless you still have that computer from the 90s and the operating system, like, the chances are So I think it's like,
I do have a calendar piece of software that's, Win 16 still runs.
yeah, yeah, that's why Windows will, that's why XP will never die.
It still runs on newer versions than that. I think it runs on like 2008.
I'm sure it does.
So,
Yeah, but that's
not without complaint, but it runs.
that's guaranteeing that GDI will never disappear, and type rendering in Windows will always be terrible until